I want you to picture a scenario. It probably happens, I don't know, once a week. You're standing in a store, maybe a coffee shop, maybe a clothing store, and you see a price tag.
Right.
And it's not just a number, it's a disruption. It's lower than you thought it would be. And before you've even really processed the math, your hand is already reaching out.
You're already grabbing it.
You're grabbing the item, maybe even grabbing two of them. And if someone asked you why, you'd probably say something about loving the brand or, you really needed that caffeine hit.
We build this whole story around it.
Exactly. We build this narrative about personal preference and taste. But today, we are looking at a source text that suggests that whole narrative is, well, largely a fiction we tell ourselves.
It's a bit of a comforting illusion, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're diving into a text called The Three Pillars of Market Demand. And, I mean, that title sounds like it belongs on a dusty syllabus.
It really does.
But the content is actually a pretty aggressive deconstruction of human behavior.
Yeah.
It argues that what we call choice is actually, well, a rigorous, almost mathematical inevitability.
That's the part I found hard to swallow at first. The idea that we are essentially, inputs and outputs machines. The mission of this deep dive is to unpack the law of demand, but we're going to skip the basic price goes down, sales go up chant.
We need to get into the why.
We need to understand the mechanism, the actual psychological gears that turn in your brain to make that sale happen.
And the source breaks this down into three distinct psychological mechanisms, these three pillars. But before we even get to the mechanics, we have to address this philosophical bombshell the author drops right at the beginning.
The fundamental base. This is where the text gets into incentives versus character.
Right, and this is crucial for anyone listening who thinks they are, say, a conscious consumer. The text explicitly argues that buyer behavior isn't a reflection of your personality or your moral character.
It's a specific, instantaneous reaction to external conditions.
Exactly.
See, this is where I want to push back a little. Because I know people, myself included, who identify really strongly with what they buy. If I buy organic fair trade coffee, that says something about who I am. It's a value statement.
Sure.
Is the text really saying that's just a reaction to a price point?
The source would argue, absolutely. It uses the phrase, all else being equal. Let's say the price of that organic coffee spiked to $50 a cup tomorrow, and the conventional stuff stayed at $2.
$50.
Would you still buy the organic one?
I mean, no, of course not. I couldn't afford to.
But you're the same person. Your character hasn't changed. Your values haven't changed. But your behavior flipped. Instantly.
Huh.
The text posits that we flatter ourselves by thinking our consumption is an expression of self. But in reality, we're just predictable actors responding to a constraint, specifically the incentive structure of price.
So we're all just rational actors masquerading as connoisseurs.
In the eyes of an economist, yes. We are responding to signals. And when those signals change, our behavior changes. Not over time, not after deep reflection, but instantaneously.
Okay, so if we accept that premise that we're programmed to respond to these signals, we need to look at the code. The source uses a character named Annie to walk us through this.
Right. Annie is our proxy for every consumer.
And she's standing at a coffee counter.
And to understand the first layer of her programming, we have to look at what happens when the price of her usual coffee drops. The first thing that kicks in is what the text calls the substitution effect.
Now, I've heard this term thrown around. Usually it's explained as, coffee gets cheaper, so I buy coffee instead of tea. But that feels a little too simple.
It's subtler than just a swap. It's about relative value. This is a point the source really emphasizes. It's not that Annie suddenly likes coffee more. Her preference map hasn't changed at all.
So what has changed?
The opportunity cost.
Okay, break that down for me. Opportunity cost in the context of a latte.
Okay, so when coffee and tea are both, say, $5, the cost of choosing coffee is 1 tea. They're at parity.
Makes sense.
But if coffee drops to $2.50 and tea stays at $5, the whole landscape shifts. Suddenly, the coffee is a bargain relative to the tea.
But the tea didn't change price.
The tea didn't change, but its position in the market did. It effectively became more expensive relative to the coffee without its price tag ever moving. The substitution effect is the brain's immediate recognition that the coffee now offers a better return on investment compared to the alternative.
So Annie isn't really choosing coffee. She's optimizing. She's looking at the two variables and realizing that the math has shifted in favor of the bean.
Precisely. And this is why brand loyalty is so fragile. Companies spend millions trying to build character into their products so you won't substitute them. But the source argues that if the price gap gets wide enough, the substitution effect is undefeated.
You will switch.
You will switch. You will substitute the cheaper utility for the expensive one.
Because the market dictates the switch. It's not an emotional breakup with tea. It's a financial calculation.
Correct. But that's only the first lever. You're standing there, you've decided to swap to the coffee because it's relatively cheaper. But then something else hits you, a feeling.
A feeling.
And this brings us to the second pillar, which I think is the most misunderstood concept in the entire text, the income effect.
Yeah, I've always had an issue with this term. Income effect sounds like I got a raise. If I'm standing in a coffee shop and the price of a latte drops, my salary hasn't changed.
Right.
My bank account is exactly the same as it was 10 minutes ago, so how can the source claim my income has increased?
It's a matter of real income versus nominal income. Your nominal income is the number on your paycheck. That's fixed. But real income is a measure of your purchasing power, what that money can actually buy.
So it's about the stretch of the dollar.
Let's go back to Annie. Suppose she walks in with a fixed budget. She has exactly $5 she plans to spend on her morning caffeine. If the coffee costs $5, she spends it all. Her budget is exhausted.
$0 left.
Right. But if the price drops to $2.50, she buys the coffee, and she's left holding $2.50 in her hand. In that specific microeconomy of the coffee shop, she is effectively, well, richer than she was yesterday.
Okay, I see the logic. She has a surplus she didn't expect to have.
And this is where the psychology gets interesting. Because she feels richer, she behaves differently, the constraint has loosened. The source explains that this sensation of surplus wealth is what drives her to buy a second cup.
Wait, hold on. This is the part that always gets me. Is she buying the second cup because she wants it or just because she has the money? Because those are two very different things.
That is the pivotal question. And the income effect says she buys it because she can. The barrier has been removed. She has this found money, and her brain instantly looks to allocate it.
And since she's already in coffee mode.
And the coffee is cheap, thanks to the substitution effect. The path of least resistance is to just double down.
It's fascinating because I catch myself doing this at sales. If I go in planning to spend $100 on jeans, and they're on sale for $50, I rarely walk out saving $50.
What do you walk out with?
I walk out with 2 pairs of jeans.
Exactly. You didn't save money. You kept your expenditure constant, but you increased your consumption volume. That is the income effect in its purest form. You felt rich enough to increase your standard of living, in this case, owning 2 pairs of jeans instead of 1.
So the store owner tricked me. They lowered the price, but they got the same amount of money out of me.
Well, they moved more inventory. And you felt like a winner because your real income allowed you to acquire more assets. It's a kind of mutual delusion in a way.
But there has to be a ceiling to this, right? If the price of coffee drops to 10 cents, Annie isn't going to buy 50 cups.
Right.
At a certain point, biology kicks in. She physically can't drink that much.
And that biological and psychological ceiling is the third pillar. And frankly, it's the one that saves us from consuming ourselves into oblivion. The text calls it diminishing marginal utility.
And utility is just economists speak for satisfaction, right? Or happiness.
Yes, or usefulness. It's the value you extract from consuming the product.
Right.
The key word here, though, is marginal. We aren't looking at the total utility of all the coffee. We're looking at the utility of that specific next cup.
The marginal unit.
So Annie drinks the first cup. What's the experience?
Oh, it's incredible. It solves the caffeine headache. It's warm. It's comforting. The value is sky high.
High utility. Now, thanks to the income effect and the low price, she buys a second one. How is that one?
It's fine.
Yeah.
You know, it keeps the momentum going, but it's not giving her that same rush as the first sip.
The utility has dropped. Now, let's say the price is low enough that she considers a third.
Okay, now we're in dangerous territory. She's jittery. She's not really enjoying it. She's just drinking it because it's there.
And the fourth.
The fourth is pure pain, a stomachache. The utility isn't just diminishing, it's practically negative.
And this is the crucial insight about price. The source points out that price isn't just a random tag. It is a reflection of this utility curve. To convince Annie to buy that first cup, the price could be high because the utility is high.
She paid $5. Easy.
But for the fourth cup, she doesn't want the fourth cup. The utility is near zero. So to induce her to buy it, to trigger that law of demand, the price must drop to match that near-zero utility.
So deep discounts aren't just generosity. They're a requirement to clear the market of low-utility units.
Exactly. The seller has to chase the utility curve all the way down. If they want you to buy 5 of something, they have to price it at the level of satisfaction you get from the 5th one, not the first one.
That completely reframes how I look at bulk pricing. Buy 3, get 2 free isn't a deal. It's an admission that the 4th and 5th units are basically worthless to me.
It's the market admitting that your interest is fading. They're just trying to find the price point that makes it worth your while to store it or consume it or just deal with the extra inventory.
So we have these 3 mechanics all working in concert. The substitution effect makes the coffee attractive relative to tea.
Right.
The income effect gives Annie the financial room to buy more. And diminishing marginal utility dictates exactly how low the price has to go to sustain that buying spree.
It's a trifecta. And when you see a demand curve sloping downward on a chart, that line is basically just a drawing of these 3 psychological forces wrestling with each other.
But there's one last section in the source that I think ties this all together into a coherent worldview. It's the section on the psychology of the residual claimant.
Owner's logic.
Yeah, this part felt the most corporate at first. But then I realized it was applying that corporate logic to the individual. Can you explain what the residual claimant actually is?
In business, the residual claimant is the owner. They are the person who claims what is left over the residue after all the costs have been paid.
So profit.
Profit, essentially. If you run a lemonade stand, you pay for lemons, you pay for sugar. Whatever is left in the jar is yours. You are the residual claimant. The source argues that when you're a consumer, you are also a residual claimant. You are the owner of that transaction. You bear the costs, the money you pay, but you also claim the benefits, the joy of the coffee.
So I'm running a profit and loss statement on my morning snack.
Unconsciously, yes. And this is where the text flips the script on what a discount really means. Usually we think of a sale as saving money.
I saved $2.
But the source frames it as a reduction of personal costs. This sounds semantic, but it really changes the equation. If your goal as a rational actor is to maximize your profit, meaning maximizing the gap between the joy you get and the pain of paying, then a price drop increases your profit margin.
Acquiring the asset becomes more profitable.
Exactly that phrase. When the price drops, the owner's logic kicks in. You look at that coffee, you calculate the utility, you subtract the now lowered cost, and you see a massive surplus of value. That surplus is your profit. And humans are hardwired to chase profit.
This explains why it's so hard to resist a deal, even for things we don't need. The owner's logic sees a high-margin transaction and just screams, "Execute!"
It overrides the fact that you don't really need the item. Your brain sees a disparity between value and cost, a positive residual, and it wants to capture it. It feels like leaving money on the table if you walk away.
That's profound. We aren't just shopping, we are arbitrageurs, constantly scanning the environment for gaps between value and price.
And that brings us full circle right back to the beginning.
The incentives, the idea that we are programmed.
If you look at the whole picture substitution, income, diminishing utility, owner's logic, you realize that market demand isn't some vague social mood. It's a highly predictable response system.
We are just rational actors navigating a landscape of data points. It makes me wonder about the concept of free will in a grocery store.
It should.
Because if the source is right, and behavior changes instantaneously when the incentives change, then how much of me is actually in the decision? If the price dictates the substitution, and the real income dictates the volume, I'm just executing the algorithm.
That is the provocative thought the text leaves us with. Are we the captains of our souls, or are we just reacting to the variables set by the market? When you grabbed that second latte, did you decide to do it, or did the math decide for you?
It's a little terrifying, but also maybe a little liberating.
How so?
Well, next time I buy something I don't need just because it's on sale, I can just blame the income effect. Sorry, I'm not irresponsible. I'm just experiencing a surplus of real income and minimizing my personal costs.
You can try that line. Let me know if it works on your bank manager.
I have a feeling the nominal income argument will win that one.
Likely so.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from, choosing coffee over tea to the complex internal accounting of the residual claimant. The main takeaway for the listener seems to be awareness.
Awareness is really the only defense. When you feel that pull to buy, just pause. Ask yourself, am I substituting? Am I feeling falsely rich? Is the utility of this next item actually there, or is the price just low enough to trick me?
Engage the brain before the owner's logic takes over.
Exactly.
Thank you for helping us decode the invisible laws of the aisle. It's certainly going to make my next trip to the supermarket a lot more analytical.
Happy to do it. Just watch out for that fourth cup of coffee.
Always. And to you, listening, keep your eyes on the price, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.